What a wild ride it's been. So this was meant to be kind of a shining global example of how Australia, one of the COVID-19 success stories, could host this international tournament in front of real live crowds. And you've had so many challenges since then. So, how would you handle things differently? Is it still worth doing had you known all of the different issues from, players and staff testing positive on the planes, having to go into isolation? Now, of course, the 5-day snap lockdown, meaning that the players are playing in front of no crowds again. Would you still do it again?
Absolutely, we would do it again. I mean, we've had the players here in Australia for 5 weeks now, and obviously, since the pandemic began in March last year, we've had significant planning and many contingencies built in, and all the things that have been thrown at us are things that could have potentially have happened. We enjoyed the first 5 days of the event with crowds, and particularly the day 5 we had our maximum number of crowds we could have, and it was great to have over 1,000 international players and their entourages from over 100 countries. It had been through 14 days of quarantine, playing in front of, in one case, a packed stadium. And then going into the snap lockdown, these last 5 days will hopefully finish this tomorrow. We're hoping and planning on the last 4 days of the event having crowds back again. So we've gone from crowds to no crowds, back hopefully to crowds. As we've had positive cases, isolation, quarantining. So there's, what we know today is very different to what we knew about 4 weeks ago, but we're proud of the fact that our broadcast numbers have been extremely strong around the world. We've got some great stories, some great tennis, and we're looking forward to a strong finish here the next 5 days.
How are the players reacting to this latest lockdown and having to play without an audience? Because, of course, a lot of this has been marred by the negative headlines, the complaints, some of the interviews given by certain players complaining about having to lock down, complaining about having to isolate when they got to Australia, complaining about the conditions of the hotels. Would the players, the ones that you speak to, do this again?
I think absolutely. At the beginning, getting into the 14 days of quarantine was not an easy exercise for the players, but they also realized it was a modified environment. They could get out for 5 hours a day and train, and that's pretty much the training time that would be required, they would use anyway each day. And then, unfortunately, there were some players that were positive. It was one player actually was positive out of the 1,000 people we brought in, and then a few others that were considered close contacts. So about 70 of them had to be in a harder lockdown for 14 days. Once they got over that, the first 3-4 days, they were pretty used to it. And then, of course, going into this extra lockdown here, they've been great. I mean, we even had a situation over a week ago where there was a positive case in the hotel of one of the workers. So everyone that stayed in that hotel had to isolate and test for 24 hours, and everyone came back negative. So in Australia, because we have no community transmission, they have a very strict protocols and processes to ensure that everyone doesn't transmit the virus, isn't negative, and as a result, is negative, and as a result, we've had to have the players adapt to this, but they've been great. They really have, and there's been one or two that have complained about it, but you would expect that. We have a large number of group of players and their entourage, and they've all been very appreciative of the opportunity. We've had $86 million of prize money on the table for them to compete with over the last few weeks. So they haven't had jobs with that to that extent over the past year. So this is a significant opportunity for them.
Very insignificant in the sport to have the first big Grand Slam of the year playing again, even with these limitations. But I think people who aren't tennis fans maybe step back and say, hey, look, doesn't this just show that people can sit at home and watch tennis from afar? Why will fans want to go back as much when they can? So tell us about the demand for tickets and also your sponsors, how eager they have been to pay up to be part of this.
Well, we're lucky. Our family of sponsors, both our broadcast and our marketing sponsors, partners, have been magnificent. In fact, I just did a call with a large group of them this morning, just keeping them updated of what's going on. And they've all been, have been sympathetic to our challenges, but also on the journey for the long haul. This is a platform for us to get considerable momentum going into 2022, and we knew that we don't know what tomorrow brings with this virus. So if we have an opportunity to run the event, we took the opportunity, and our partners have been great about it. As far as the fans go, at the beginning, there was a slow uptake of tickets, and then within about 2 or 3 days, it really accelerated. and we were building great momentum. We were sold out for this past weekend, but then of course on the Friday night had to stop play because of the snap lockdown, and it was a surreal moment coming to the site on the weekend when there were just no fans. But we'll get back to that point, and I think there's many lessons that we've learned. There's many protocols and processes that we've adjusted because we've had to ensure that the moment you have a positive case within your playing group, within your bubble, them as well as the close contacts have to isolate, and then you've got to very quickly present a spread of the virus, and that's the biggest risk. The biggest risk we've always had is that, and every day we wake up, I'm always extremely anxious and nervous about that because that could bring the whole thing down. But we haven't had that to this point, and so for this point, it's been really a considerable success. We've had fans, we've had no fans, we'll go back to fans. We've had all the top players.
Well, Craig,
so it's been great.
Of course, one has to say, well, gee, are there any lessons here for Japan, for the Tokyo Olympics? The thing is, though, just take the number of fans and the length of the event and how far it's spread over a big area. It's a gym, it's multiplying it, right? So are there any lessons for the Japanese after watching what you're doing in Australia?
Well, I think absolutely. We've shared some things already, like the type of PCR testing that we're doing, the frequency of the testing, and how we do the nasal pharyngeal test, and then also the saliva test, and how we are isolating and quarantining athletes and their entourage, how we create a modified environment where you can train and do that at the same time, and how we protect the bubble to ensure that there's no positive cases in it. And the processes we go through our contact tracing. So we've learned a lot on systems and protocols, and we're always happy to share those. Clearly, the Olympic Games is more athletes than we have. But one thing that we do know that works is that if you isolate the group and quarantine them, for the athletes, if you can create a modified training environment, then you almost ensure that the athletes coming into your bubble are free of the virus, and then they can compete in a free environment. Then the next challenge is if you integrate them with fans, and that's a whole different series of requirements. But we have spoken to some people at the Olympics, and we'll continue to provide the intelligence that we have. And we're not saying this is the way to do it. We know what has worked for us and what hasn't worked, and we also know where we can help others. So it's been a massive and it's been a mammoth logistical exercise. But it's something I'm incredibly proud of the team, what they've pulled off, because this hasn't yet been done in global sport and live sport and entertainment to the extent that we've done it. And if we can finish the next 6 days with the event continuing and get to a man and a woman holding up the trophy, maybe someone we know before, a new person, new player, I think it'll be an exciting time for the sport.
All right.
Craig, we know that the total prize money pool hasn't been affected, but I'm wondering, though, have you heard anything from sponsors? Have there been concerns given all the developments? Do you think there'd be more caution in terms of sponsorships going forward, knowing the experience that's likely to play out during COVID?
I think it's a great question, because from a broadcast point of view, we've stayed whole because we've still got content we're pushing out to the rest of the world. From a sponsor point of view, we've not. There's been reductions, but there has to be, because sponsors cannot activate with an in-stadium audience. Those that they can activate from a point of view of broadcast and digital, but without having crowds, they're not able to do it on site. So there has to be an impairment there. But it's been really good. It hasn't been as much as we initially predicted. And then, of course, our major hit financially comes in premium experiences and ticket sales. So that's gonna create a significant hole. But as an organization, we had a cash reserve. We've also taken a loan. We'll run into debt, but we think it's a really important exercise to go through so that we can maintain a level of momentum going to 2022.